to the Dungeon Plunger Podcast. My name is Jason Weeb, and this is the show in which I, a real-life janitor and dungeon master, teaches you how to plunge in and run a better Dungeons & Dragons game. Without further ado, let's plunge into this week's episode.
Do you want to hear about my campaign?
Welcome, Dungeon Plunger Union members. Well, another week has gone by, and it's time for another podcast. We've got calls to take, stories to tell. What have I been up to this week? This week, most of my games were kind of on a hiatus, with the exception of my Stars Without Numbers game, which we'll get into a little bit later. I realized that I have a buttload of phone calls that came in, some that I completely missed because the Mimic mailbox, being the Mimic mailbox, decided to eat them and then regurgitated them. So we're going to take a bunch of calls today. I'm going to talk about what's been going on in my games and tell you about my campaign. And so that's what we're going to do. So without further ado, let's plunge into the Mimic mailbox and see what our callers have to say. Okay, first up we got Carl D. Let's listen to what Carl has to say.
Weeb, Jason, Plunger of Dungeons, dearest gaming friend. Carl D here. Just hadn't got around to giving you a call yet, so that's what this is. It's a call. Say hey. Podcast is awesome. Enjoy it. Looking forward to the next episode and looking forward to our next game. Take it easy, my friend. Talk to you later. Bye.
Hey, Carl. Thank you so much for the call. Glad that you called in, and I'm extremely sorry that somehow I ended up missing your call. I did find it. Carl is my game master for two separate games. One, we're doing a online play-by-post using Karen 2nd edition, and we are running through the Nightmare over Ragged Hollow, which is a fantastic little adventure module by the Merry Mushman, and I highly recommend that you check it out and play it. The other thing that we're doing is Mothership, and we're doing two separate sort of little campaigns of that. One, we have our main characters who we started out in another bug hunt, and the second one where we were using, I believe it was a pound of flesh, and we were in the same universe, same similar space station that our first group managed to connect to, except this time we were like low-life cyberpunk dudes. And, well, fortunately, we did not make it. That's okay. TPKs happen. And you know what? I really, really enjoyed playing those characters. And I look forward to see where our Group A goes in that game. I really like Mothership. I think it's a great little rules light system. I'm not 100% sold on the rules, but what I am sold on is how they present the adventuring material that they have. It's so well laid out and so game master friendly, and I think the campaign advice on how to run the game is solid. I would highly recommend it. Also, you can check out Carl. He has a little blog called the Transorbital Game Pit blog, and I put a link for that in the show notes. So I suggest you check it out and just take in Carl's deep thoughts on gaming. I promise you'll enjoy them. And if you don't, then I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to beat you up. I'm joking. Or am I? All right. Let's take a listen to our next caller, a Southern gentleman some of you may know as Evil Jeff.
Weeb, it's Evil Jeff. Hey man, been listening to your podcast as you get them out there. A lot of times I just don't have the moment to comment on them and everything, but still been listening to them as you drop them. still sounds great, nice and tight. Appreciate the fact that you stopped taking out the ums and ahs and everything. It was feeling a little clipped there, but it still sounds great with that mic, so I still hate you. Your last podcast with the rules and so forth, or excuse me, take it to the next level, my apologies. That was a great podcast. I don't think there is anything I could add or subtract from what you said. Pretty much in agreement there. Good advice to do that. And it's great for a GM to go through and reflect on things, or even players who think they're going to GM, reflect on the game that you want and, what is stopping you from doing it. So it's great that you put that out there. But really, I wanted to go back and comment on the previous one where you talked about being an asshole and everything. Dude, you got into the main content and we're getting through it. And I was like, did I open up the D&D Confessions podcast? Is this where I got to start adding my own story? Once at band camp. But, there's nothing you could really have done in that last instance. You produce the game, you produce the content, you want to do that. And you don't know what somebody's going through. You have no clue unless there's communication. And I'm just like you. I don't like the safety tools as they're presented a lot of times, because to me, my safety tool is the fact that I have a communication ahead of time with the players. In any game that I have GM'd, and recent games at conventions, and now they have to do this at conventions, but there's a right up front, it's like, this is what we expect. This is what is not going to happen. If you've got an issue with something, some potential content, let me know now. If there's something you don't want. Because I am all for the speak up now or forever hold your peace. Now, granted, some people may not realize something is going to bother them. But you give people the opportunity to speak. If they're unwilling to communicate with you and they're going to later on, start bashing you or being ugly about the fact that you portrayed something, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? Not yours, not mine, because we said, hey, tell us if you're going to have a problem. Speak up then. Don't wait till later. Now if something happens right in the middle of something and somebody gets uncomfortable, that should also have been part of the conversation. If you have a problem with something comes up in the middle of the game or something, somebody does something, say so then. Because we all like to game. We all want to participate in this activity. But don't be unhappy after the fact because you didn't say something. So, yeah. And your comment about instant asshole, just add alcohol. Yeah, I've seen that done many different ways with different substances and so forth, but you're right. And knowing what your triggers are, knowing what causes those things is a great way to keep yourself in check and make sure that you're being the best you can be. Appreciate all the stuff you're doing, man. Keep it up.
Hey, Evil Jeff. Thank you so much for the call. I really appreciate it. This was another one that got stuck in the Mimic mailbox guts, so I apologize for that. It's a little late, and I promise y'all I'm going to do a lot better in the future, making sure that I get all your calls and stuff published at a good time. I really appreciate the fact that everybody takes the time to listen to the show and then call into the show and share your thoughts and feelings, and I need to respect that. I need to be on top of that. So thank you very much. I just wanted to address a few things. So first of all, I thank you so much that the sound quality is still tickling those ears of yours. And I appreciate the compliments on the show with the next level. And dude, you cracked me up hardcore with the D&D Confessions. You know what? Maybe that'll be another spin-off podcast. Welcome to the D&D Confessions podcast. Today, we take in calls from across the globe with people discussing how they fricked up and seek repentance from our Lord and Savior, Gary Gygax. But, yeah, no, man, when you're talking about safety tools, the first thing that popped into my mind was that scene from Black Hawk Down when Captain Steele is talking to Hoot and he says, "I'm talking about your weapon, soldier. Now, Delta, no Delta. That's still a hot weapon. Your safety should be on at all times." And Hoot's like, "This is my safety, sir." And then he like puts up his hand and points his index shooting finger. You know, tangents, bro. That's where I'm at right now. I did not expect as much talk about the safety tools from people as I got. And clearly it's a subject that people feel very, very strongly about. And you know what? Maybe at some point I'll do a real covering of the topic in depth and something. But I think the general concept is that, from what I'm hearing from everybody, is that, listen, we all want our players and everybody to have fun. And what's important is how express ourselves and really have that open communication with each other. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and feelings, and I agree. Yeah, instant ashhole, also a good one. You know, you're right. We all have our vices and we all have our triggers, and I think that's how we become better people, right? Is to sit with these feelings, to recognize when we're going through something that's triggering us, and learning how to react better to those situations. It's kind of that ancient Buddhist mindset of, you know, sitting with your feelings. And I never really understood that. As I get older, I feel like I'm getting a little bit better at understanding what that means. We got another call from Evil Jeff. This one's from a little bit later on. So let's hear what he has to say in Evil Jeff Part 2. That's how French people would say too, except they'd probably say it way better because I'm an Anglophone, so I say it duh. I think the French would say it duh. I don't know. I need to get a real French person on here. I know I got my Quebecer people. I know you Quebecois people. You're like, Jason, maybe you should just stick to English, you tête carré. And let's hear Evil Jeff.
It's Evil Jeff. Hey, I had to stop through your most recent podcast, Playing God, after you got through the Kickstarters and such. You mentioned Masters of Orion, and that is a video game, I'm pretty certain, because I believe it's on my list of ones I wanted to play. So, yeah, there's that. And I agree with you about all the, buying stuff and so forth. If you've known me for any length of time, you know how little I will want to spend on something. If I can't get it for free or highly reduced price, and it's something that I might use and realistically might use. Not one of these, well, maybe one day. No, that's not going to work. It's like, yeah, there's a greater than 50% chance I could use it. I might get it at that point. But yeah, there's no reason in buying anything and tying up all your money for that long. That just sucks. Great show. I'm going to go listen to the rest of it.
The sultry tones of a man from the deep south. We all love Evil Jeff, and Evil Jeff always has great opinions and thoughts. And so you're right, dude. I looked it up. Masters of Orion is a video game. It looks pretty rad. I don't know. It looks like these weird bird people and gray aliens. And also one of the things that struck me was, so when you were talking about buying stuff, I was saying to myself, WWJD. What would Jeff do? And then I was like, nah, man, we got to change it up. It's got to be WWEJD. I mean, what's one more letter on a bracelet? What would Evil Jeff do? You know, bro, my dad is one of those dads, and I feel like growing up in the South, maybe this is just a stereotype, but I feel like you've got at least one family member, maybe we all have a family member like this, but the motto of my family is, if it's free, it's for me. I take that to heart. Then again, when I look at my bookshelves, maybe not. You know, the one thing, all joking aside, the one thing that you said there that I think is really, really poignant is the tying up your money. I'd never really thought about it that way, but yeah, you know, like all this money is kind of locked into these books and into these games. And, you know, that's money that could have been spent for like drugs and alcohol. So good thinking, Evil Jeff. I like the way you think. And if you can't get enough of Evil Jeff, I suggest you go and listen to his podcast, Minions and Musings, which I put into the show notes, because that's the kind of guy I am. I'm out there trying to support the community, okay? I'm trying to reach out and touch somebody in a non-bad touch way. And now suddenly I have the Bloodhound Gang. You and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals. Okay, next caller. Give you a little bit of another delicious and most excellent piece of advice and wisdom from the ever-present, most excellent drawer, John McNally of the Pacific Northwest. Hit it, John.
Jason, Mr. Dungeon Plunger himself, this is John McNally calling from the Pacific Northwest. Listen, regarding that set of props from Masks of Nyarlathotep, I don't think you need to worry the other folks in your household about the cost. And I don't think you should run all of it either. Maybe this is an opportunity for a certain set of players to demonstrate very literal buy-in, commitment to playing through this campaign with you. You know, you could present it to them saying, look, there's this set of props. I think it would really enhance the play experience. What if we all chipped in? You know, in what other hobby or pastime, you know, thinking of things like sports or other clubs, do we expect one person to foot the bill for everything? It's actually really uncommon, and I'm not sure how this custom developed among tabletop role players, but, you know, I say defy that custom. Have people literally put their money where their mouth is. And maybe you might, who knows, you might see some increased engagement and longevity to the campaign. Anyway, it's going to cross my mind. Keep on plunging. Talk to you soon.
And that, folks, is John from the Pacific Northwest. Also, the creator and the colorer and designer of my totally rad and most excellent cover art. That little guy, well, I'm going to tell you about that, but first I want to respond to a little bit of what John is saying here. So first of all, John called in without having listened to where I talk about how I actually ended up getting the Masks of Nyarlathotep set, and he kind of messaged me afterwards going, yeah, maybe that call wasn't worthwhile talking about, but I disagree. I think John brought up an excellent point, and I think it's worth commenting on. So, you know, he brings up a good point. Why is it that we as game masters take it upon ourselves to provide all of the goods at the game? You know, we foot the expenses. I think that probably comes from the fact that because we're the person that's running the game, we are more engaged by the material. We're more excited to get our hands on it and see how it can enhance the games that we run, and that we are the people who probably are the most gung-ho in the campaign, in the game, right? We are collectors. We are the ones that, you know, do the gathering, and we really, really want to get our players together. But the other thing he says is like, well, why don't we get the players to put their money where their mouths are? And, you know, there's part of me that feels really uncomfortable about that. I feel uncomfortable about asking people to support something that we do. I know we're doing it together. I know that we're sharing this thing, that they're getting entertainment essentially for free, but I'd like to think that, my players, they bring snacks. Not all of them are financially as well off as I am. And I enjoy having people at my table, and I wouldn't want the financial worry to be an issue from stopping them to come to the table. That being said, in one of my earlier games, when I was running the Tomb of Annihilation for 5th edition, one of my players actually bought me the vinyl map of Chult, and that was such a touching gift, and I really, really appreciated getting that. And we slapped it down on the table whenever we played, and I really love having that visual centerpiece when I play my games. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to hear what everybody else out there in the community has to, say about this topic, because I do think that, maybe we do need to challenge this thought. So thank you very much for the call, John, and let's listen to our next caller.
Greetings, listener. It is I, Hector, the real Dungeon Plunger, not that poser Jason. We've got a clogged algorithm down here, so make sure we get those likes, those favorites, those comments flowing. Plungers up!
So that one there comes from Hector, the real Dungeon Plunger. Kind of a snarky fellow, but yeah, I would suggest doing what he says. Get those likes in, get those comments in, get those phone calls in, and get those reviews in. Hector came out of a conversation that I was having with my gaming group, where I was like, we need to have a name for the little warrior dude with the plunger on the art that John McNally made. And so one of my game group dudes came up with the idea, and he sent in this message. So thank you very much, Ed. Really appreciate it. And you guys haven't heard the end of Hector, the real Dungeon Plunger. Next up, we got a call from Jason Connerly of Nerds RPG Variety Cast, the most prolific caller ever. All right, let's hear what Jason has to say.
Hey, the other Jason here calling in on your Playing God episode. I'm only 8 minutes into the episode, but, you mentioned the Perilous Void and, its sources and War of the Worlds. I'm sure as a hip guy, you're familiar with Jeff Wayne's version of War of the Worlds, but if not, you need to look up Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds and listen to that. It's basically like turning it into a musical. And I know what that sounds like, but it's actually amazing. So check out Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. It is well worth your time. Also, I've got to push my glasses up and say the Free League game is Alien, no S. Aliens with an S is a game by Leading Edge Games from the 90s. I can say that because I own that game. We won't get into the fact that the Leading Edge game Aliens is much better than Alien because, you own Alien and I don't want to ruin your enthusiasm for the game that you have. But, let's try to be accurate here. Okay, done pushing my glasses up. Very cool that you got the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society set. That is very awesome. I'm happy. I know you've been wanting that for a long time. And like you say, it's, Facebook Marketplace or these kind of things. If you don't look, then you can't find the deals. The other Jason again, I won't drag us into any political talk because I don't do that on my show either. But you're talking about the escalating prices for Kickstarters, and I haven't backed a lot of things lately for that same reason. The last big one I backed was Reaver by Joe Salvador. And it's kind of a shame. There's a board game, Skull Tales, out of Spain that I really want to back. I own Skull Tales. I own the expansions of it, but the newest one adds some more solo stuff to it. It's a pirate board game. You can play solo or co-op, and it's a pretty great game. But yeah, I'm the same way with the price of shipping, everything else, this might be the first time I don't back one of the Skull Tales projects, and that makes me sad. So there you go. Hey, the other Jason again. Sorry for bogging you down with all these calls. You don't have to play them all. So I stopped at 31 minutes into Playing God to comment on Chase call and Joe's call. You know, the idea of preparing to improvise that Anthony talks about is very true and very useful. And that's where something like Masks comes in, because you don't really know what the players are going to exactly do, and you have to be able to roll with it. And like Joe was saying, that's why that replayability is there. I've got an intro adventure that I run for Barbarians Lemuria, and I've run it at least half a dozen times, probably more than that. And it's always a little bit different because it's a scenario, but there's no built-in solutions for the scenario. And every group attacks the problem a little bit differently, so it's always fresh for me, the GM, because I don't know how they're going to do it, and I've got to react and think about how the NPCs are going to react to what the players do. And like I say, different players do different things, so it's always a little bit different no matter who's playing, which makes it fun. And I prefer adventures like that and scenarios like that where, you know, it's not locked into a linear A, B, C, D, but, you know, it kind of gives you an opening, you know, an opening setup, and then, hey, it's all up to the players, and you react off what they do. That's my jam. But, okay, I'm going to listen to the rest of your episode now.
Hey, Jason. Thank you so much for your call. Really appreciate it. And if you are listening to the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, you need to do yourself a favor. Find that best podcast on the internet and take a listen. Your ears will thank you later. Jason, I had not heard of that particular version of War of the Worlds. I'm not going to lie, did sound a little weird when you said it, that it's a musical, but that being said, so does South Park have a musical episode too. So Team America, also a musical, I think. I could be wrong. Talking about Team America, you know, it's a real bummer that the state of the world right now, and it's also unfortunate that our refuge and our hobby is taking a hit because of this, and hopefully, you know, things will get better and it's not going to end up, you know, destroying a bunch of companies that put out cool stuff. You made me laugh because I did not know that the game was actually called Alien. I honestly thought that it was called Aliens. So thank you for correcting me. I apologize. I will decrease my nerd cred score, and hopefully I will be able to fix that in the future to get my nerd cred back up to where it needs to be. I just wanted to really thank you for your call, and hope you call in again. Take it easy, my brother. Next up, we got another one of my friends that I've made online. His name is Varger, aka Kyle, and he runs this wicked awesome YouTube channel called Rolling Solo RPG. I got that linked into the show notes, so you should give it a looky-loo. Let's hear what Kyle has to say.
Hey, Jason, Kyle here. I just got done listening to your episode, taking it to the next level. Really appreciate the shout out. It was a great episode. And at the end, you left us, the listeners, with the question, what kind of advice would we give to somebody wanting to learn some more complicated games? And I think complicated rules are kind of just there to add more flavor or more accuracy, I guess you could say, to certain situations that could come up, like chases, for example. Instead of just making it one roll, okay, you caught up to him, good job. It could be, you know, there are different levels to that encounter. And also you connected that with a setting. You were talking about one of your players. They liked a book because they liked the setting. And that's all, kind of the reason I was drawn to Pathfinder. They have a really rich lore, and I love the gods and everything that has to offer that. So I think setting is a huge part of it. And you can always not use the complicated rules, or you can take rules from a different game that has a well thought out complicated system and apply it to really anything. But yeah, man, you're doing a great job. Can't wait for the next episode. Keep on keeping on. Elbows up.
Hey, Kyle. Thanks for calling in. I know this call came in a lot earlier, but I lost it in the Mimic mailbox, and like everybody else, I apologize. I really need to get my act together. I really like the points that you made in this call. I agree. Oftentimes, the rules and adding complexity to those rules increases the flavor and the accuracy, if that's what you're going for. Sometimes I feel like maybe complexity isn't all that it's cut up for. But I guess in the end, it's really a personal taste, right? And I agree as well. I think setting is a very important aspect of the game, and one of those things that can be overlooked. And I agree that Golarion from Pathfinder is really, really cool. And I feel like they did a really good job at putting together a very complex world. And it kind of bothers me when people are like, oh, well, it's a kitchen sink world, because I mean, it is to some level in that, you know, they've put in a lot of different kind of hooks for you to be able to play any kind of different world. But at the same time, I feel like that undercuts what makes it such a great setting. You know, it doesn't give it enough credit, if you follow me. But thank you very much for your call, and let's hear what the next call is from the last episode.
Hey, Jason. I just finished your episode Playing God. Loved the episode, man. I'm glad to see you're sticking with this and keeping them coming. I love it. At the end of the episode, you asked if anybody had advice or a source for people wanting to create their own worlds. I don't have much qualification in this area, really, so as far as sources, I don't have any, but I think it's kind of a double-sided coin. I myself play solo, so I like the mystery, so I like to kind of create as I go. That being said, I use the world of Golarion, so a little bit is already said, but also you can take a world that already exists and add your own stuff into it, so you can do a bit of both. But then on the opposite side of that, some people just love creating every little detail about a brand new world, and that's awesome too. So really, I think you could do anything. Just go with what you like. But anyway, as always, love the show, dude. Keep them coming. Elbows up. Hey, Jason, me again. I just realized that I said double-sided coin. All coins are double-sided. Well, I'm going to have to go have a chat with whoever edits my teleprompter, so I will catch you later. Peace.
Hey, Kyle. I love that you added that little addendum at the end where you realized that you had said double-sided coin. The first time that I had listened to the call, I totally missed that you said it was a double-sided coin, but it made me chuckle when you brought it up. I think you make a great point. I think that we have two different styles of doing stuff where, you know, you take that whole cloth world and then you make it your own, or, you know, you make that thing from scratch. And I think both are very valid ways of doing it. And I think experimenting with what you enjoy is probably the best way to do it. My preference these days has been to take something that's been created mostly for me and then adapt that to the setting that I'm playing. Whatever the campaign kind of theme is, I feel like I don't have enough time in my days to create things from whole cloth anymore. And the things that we're looking for in a campaign are a lot of those tropes that exist in whatever the genre is that we're playing. And so there's no sense in my mind of like rebuilding the wheel when there's already tools out there and already settings out there that do that. Thank you very much for the call. And well, folks, that wraps it up for all the phone calls we've got this week. It's been a callapalooza. We've got a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and I love it. So keep those calls coming. I love hearing your opinions. I love hearing your thoughts, and it's heartwarming to know that I have so many great listeners and people who are encouraging and want to hear the show. So thank you very much. to Jason Connerly of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, Evil Jeff from the Minions and Musing podcast, Carl D from the Transorbital Game Pit, Kyle Varger from the Rolling Solo RPG YouTube channel, and of course, John McNally from the Pacific Northwest, the most excellent artist who ever artist, and Ed, the voice of Hector, the real Dungeon Plunger. With that, let's get into the main topic of this week, which basically stems from my last episode where I had been talking about what was going on in my week and my gaming stuff, and it ended up being such a long little chit chat about my different, campaigns and stuff like that I felt like, you know what, I'm just going to cut this out and I'm going to post it on to the next episode. So I feel like this is just a real nice little hodgepodge of calls and me just chit chatting about my games, kind of like having a conversation with a bunch of gamer bros. And so I hope that, you enjoy it and, take away something from it. And if not, just have a relaxing, enjoyable listen while you do whatever it is that you do when you listen to podcasts. Do you listen to this podcast while you're having a shower? Do you listen to it while you're dropping a deuce? Do you listen to it when you're doing your laundry or washing your dishes? Let me know. I am very curious. I suspect that most of you probably listen to it while you're doing public transport or driving in your vehicle. And, that's cool. It's kind of boring. But you know what? I'm not here to judge. So let me know. Anyway, let's get on with the show and listen to
Do you want to hear about my campaign?
Let's get it on.
In my last episode, I was basically recording before that week had occurred, so I really didn't have any sort of like RPG updates about what was going on. So I really wanted to talk about what's been going on in some of my campaigns, because I had an amazing Stars Without Numbers / Traveler game last week. So basically, this is the update. Going way back, in session 11, we have one of the players is playing a dude. He's a medical droid named Isaac, and it's pretty cool the way he did it, because he basically says his name is based off his model number, which is I55AC. So if you write it out, it spells Isaac basically in whatever leet terms, I don't know. And I thought that was pretty rad. Anyway, basically the idea behind Isaac is that he's a medical droid that kind of goes with Merc troops and helps them. So he's able to go into like really, really dangerous, places. And at some point he has some sort of, I guess, like an epiphany as far as like a robot can have. I kind of look at droids in my setting as if they're like in Star Wars. So they have these sort of emotional, almost, personalities basically. So he basically decided he kind of hates humans, but because it's in his programming, he has to help them. And he sort of left the Merc company that he was in, and he ended up joining this group, the current crew that they're in. Anyway, during session 11, Isaac was killed in an escape from a mining asteroid facility named Demeter MB831 that was owned and controlled by a gangster named Boris the Butcher. They managed to save Boris and, get a favor from him, but during the process, the base was basically blown up. Unfortunately, while trying to hold back the alien entity that had taken over the base so that the rest of the crew could escape, Isaac was blown up. But we had ruled, even though Stars Without Numbers says that once a robot dies, they're dead, they can't be put into another body. We decided that was lame and that we wanted Isaac to, survive. And so basically his CPU sort of fused to the hull of their ship. And so they were able to recover it. And through a discussion with the player, he was like, listen, I don't want to just be put into any body, and I don't want to play Isaac again right away. I kind of want to build up to this point where we put Isaac into we make it into an adventure. And so he ended up taking over one of the NPCs, and it was pretty cool much later on. So now in session 23, it was determined that we needed Isaac to kind of come back so that the NPC that character was playing could go and do something else. And Isaac was merged with this semi-psychotic protocol droid that ended up becoming a bartender that was a URL model. Essentially, that droid's name was Earl. So now we have Isaac/Earl that kind of got melded together. But because we determined that, that moving a droid from one body to the other wasn't an easy task, the two sort of basically became one, and now they had this split personality. And so Earl, who was kind of mental, if enough stress was put on them, would basically pop up to the front and want to kill people. There was a lot of fun stuff that happened because of that, and I would basically roll a d6, and if it came up a 1, then Earl would override whatever it was that Isaac wanted to do. Session number 24, the crew goes to Tech World Station, which is like a super highly advanced station that's over Tech World proper. They needed to go there because they had a device that was attached to a highly impenetrable vault that they had stolen. They needed to take the data from this device to a supercomputer that was able to take that and create a key that would be able to open that vault. And the vault was basically for all intents and purposes, indestructible. So the only way to get into the vault was going to be with the key. Tech World is owned by this greedy mega corporation known as JEDCO, or the General Development Corporation. They essentially have designs over the Trojan Reach sector, which is the place where, all the action is taking place. Because JEDCO Tech World have such highly advanced technological capabilities, it was decided that this was the perfect opportunity for Isaac/Earl to be split and put into a new upgraded body. And the player basically wanted to be put into a combat frame so that he could open up a bunch of whoop butt on people. This was something we had talked about for a very, very long time. So everything was come together perfectly. Eventually, they meet a patron who was this eccentric, highly obnoxious, rich guy who was able to transfer Isaac into a new body. But it was with the condition that they had to go and do a mission for him, which they agreed to. And when Isaac was put into this new body, it was determined that Earl could not be separated from, the consciousness. And so now Earl sort of is there. But the sort of randomness of him showing up has disappeared, and now Isaac is able to access basically new skills that a protocol droid would have in addition to his medical droid skills, and now he has greater combat abilities. But in addition to that, Isaac learned that there was something else, some sort of dormant, sleeping entity deep inside his new body. So with a sense of foreboding, the group went and did their mission. Essentially, one of the characters, when his character died, he was playing an engineer, and then his character died and he made a new character. And his name was Tommy. And he basically, because the crew had been going up against JEDCO for pretty much the entire campaign, all of these things that they've encountered had JEDCO behind it one way or another. And so he decided that he was a former employee of JEDCO and that he had blown up floor of one of the JEDCO office buildings after completely losing it with the company. And he has a serious grudge with the company, and he wants nothing more than to see them taken down. Now, one of the things that came up that was just part of the reason why I've really loved this game and why I really love this group that I'm playing with is that they just come up with these ideas and they're like, hey dude, what about this? And I'm like, what? Okay, let's hear it. So the player of Tommy was like, what if there's a bunch of other Tommies that walk around? And that got me thinking. I was like, that's crazy. So basically what happened is that Tommy shows up, and the players didn't know this. The other players didn't know that this is what this guy had said to me. And so while they're all walking around, like another Tommy goes walking down the hallway and they're like, what the hell? Like there's multiple Tommies. And so it was pretty cool. And I had decided, because the player playing Tommy was wearing a full combat suit, like combat armor, and his face was covered, that essentially Tommies are able to recognize each other by some sort of like pheromones. And so one of the Tommies walking by just sort of like stops, kind of looks at the guy wearing the face mask and is like, huh, that's weird. And everybody was like, oh my God, are we going to get discovered now? And then the guy walks on and they were like, oh my God, they can smell each other. Like, that's crazy. So the group goes to this secret lab so that they can recover the data for this obnoxious noble patron that, transferred Isaac into his new body. And he basically said, okay, I need all of this data and I need everybody in the lab annihilated. The group goes in, they start wiping out everybody, and they finally get into the lab proper. And when they get into the lab proper, they realize that the research that's being done here is on alien DNA. And they know about this alien DNA because while they were on the planet Fist and they were aiding an archaeological dig, they had encountered these crazy alien entities that, or because of this weird alien slime, they were able to mutate people and transform them into these monstrous entities. And so that really, really freaked them out that these guys were like studying this stuff. But not only that, they discovered as they went further into the lab, these human-sized cryotubes. When they went to kind of wipe off the condensation ice that was like on top of them, like that scene in Aliens when the dudes come in to salvage and they find Ripley in her cryo berth. They look and they see the faces and they realize that all these cryotubes are full of frozen Tommies. Not only that, but then they learn that a Tommy had escaped the lab a few months back, and that this Tommy's serial number matched the player character serial number. So now this player's like, oh my God, like I had no recollection of this, and my character has some sort of like alien DNA in it. And that was freaky because honestly, the amount of craziness that they saw that this DNA could do, they were like, oh my God, we're walking around with this dude. In the end, they didn't really have too much time to think about the repercussions of all this and what that meant or even what to do about it. But basically, the security forces of the research lab were preparing to descend on them, and they needed to get out of there. And so now they're on their way back to Drynax, which is their home base, to crack open this vault that they've stolen and see what kind of treasure is inside, and deal with the fallout of all this. So it's been a pretty crazy campaign. I've had so much fun with it. I know we're coming to the end. There's still so many threads and things that we could do, but I'm really looking forward to doing masks. So at some point, this will come to an end. Hopefully it's going to be a satisfying conclusion. And, I've been thinking that at some point, maybe we'll come back to these characters or something in this, part of the Traveler world, because we've had a lot of fun playing this campaign. In my ladies group, the Dolmenwood campaign continues. We're going to probably be on a hiatus for the next kind of, think about maybe a month or two, just because people are going on vacations and stuff. But yeah, so we continued Hole in the Oak, and my Dolmenwood game shares sort of the same setting kind of, sort of, but not really with my youth group Barrow Maze campaign. I stole a bunch of stuff from my youth group to use in this campaign because I really wasn't sure how long it was going to last, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time coming up with stuff. The group was originally sent by the wizard Mazza the Magnificent from Helix to recover the ring from Winter's daughter. So the group went back and they were kind of like, hey, why did this guy want us to get this ring in the first place? So when they went back to the town of Helix, to Mazza the Magnificent's tower, they discovered that something wasn't all that it seemed. And it turned out that the Mazza that they were talking to was not Mazza, but in fact a serpent person in disguise. And that the real Mazza had been locked in his underwear in the basement. So they killed the serpent person and they took his stuff. So they were super excited because this wizard dude, this, serpent wizard had like a snake staff that could like basically shoot like a magic missile that was like a snake basically. And it could also produce a snake that slithered out of the end of the staff and could attack. And I kind of made it way too powerful because, man, the poison that this thing can do is unbelievable. I may have to figure out what to do about that. But anyway, Mazza the Magnificent, once he was saved, the real Mazza, told them that they needed to recover the Azer blade so they could defeat the serpent people menace. And that blade was purportedly in the dungeon below the hole in the oak. So they had gone down into the dungeon. They fought a bunch of goat people who had tried to put them to sleep by lacing their tea with sleeping herbs. But the halfling noticed before that, hey, these herbs are probably not the tea that we think it is. And so that was when the battle started. And they took out those dudes pretty handily. And then the most crazy thing happened. So while exploring the dungeon, their torch went out in a room that had a teleport circle underneath a carpet. And one of my players brought it up later because I hadn't really thought about it, but they're like, hey, how come if it's a teleport circle underneath the rug that the rug didn't disappear? And I was like, that's a great question. I think if I had to answer it, I would be like, basically, like, listen, it's the mysteries of the dungeon. Not everything makes sense down here. It's a mythic underworld. And anyway, so during this time, the halfling was sort of preparing to look underneath the carpet. And as she was crawling around, I ruled that she had ended up disappearing to where the teleporter took her. And when they finally got their torch lit again, they were like, oh my God, the halfling is gone. Where the heck is Cora? And so one of the players was like, hey, wouldn't it be really funny if I pushed one of my companions onto the rug? And the other one was like, dude, don't do that. And I was like, okay, give me a roll to see if you can, like, push the person against their will. And they succeeded. So another person disappeared and they saw this time and they were like, oh my gosh, where did our wizard go? And so I figured, okay, the whole group is just going to like get on the carpet and, follow each other. And normally I kind of hide what happens when like a teleporter or something like that happens, just because I don't want people to go, oh, I want to have that sense of like trepidation. Like, are we going to die if we go on this? Like, do we just get disintegrated or are we actually getting teleported somewhere else, But I didn't want to like, this is their first time playing, and it's really like only like, I don't know, like the second or third session, fourth session, something like that. And, they're new players and I didn't want them to, feeling too much anxiety about it. And so anyway, I let them know, like I let the halfling know, like, yeah, you're in this other place and you're away from the group and, you're like, somewhere else. And so I assumed that the rest of the group would follow, given that, their partner was safe. But no, the group decided to split up. So now I have two groups going through this dungeon, and one group has almost been wiped out. Thankfully, Shadowdark has given them the ability to be a lot tougher than they would be in OSE. And the other group did really well going up against some of the threats that they went up against. So I'm pretty impressed. I really thought they were all going to be dead, and it's quite frankly they might still all die in there. I don't know. But I really don't see how a first level group is supposed to make it through OSE. If they were playing with OSE, like Old School Essentials, how they would be able to survive this, because this dungeon is really freaking deadly for first level characters. So that was my ladies group. And my youth group game in Barrow Maze, we're now at our session 16. The session previous to this, the gnome cleric in the group, who's the cleric of Yig. So this takes place in like the Barrow Maze campaign setting. And essentially I had started off the group with Old School Essentials and we were doing Barrow Maze. And then at one point I got fed up and I switched to Shadow Dark. The gnome cleric Norbit, they're on their way back from their latest adventure, and another gnome comes running out of into the path, and his name is Dimble, and Norbit knows Dimble, who is a alchemist that lives just outside of Helix in a ruins, above a ruins. So I had used a map from Dyson Logos. It's one of his more popular maps. I don't remember what the name of it is. The gnome Dimble had converted a ruin above a dungeon into his little alchemical shop, and below that there was a dungeon. Basically, it was Dimble said that some of his friends were captured by goblins who had broken into the alchemist shop and they had stolen a bunch of alchemical supplies. And I had gotten this idea for this adventure from reading the Book of Vile Darkness that was written by Monty Cook way back in the 3.5 days of D&D. So it was something that had always been sitting there and I'd always wanted to do it. And I was like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity. So basically, as they delved into this dungeon, they determined that the goblins had figured out a way to take a bunch of different alchemical reagents and stuff and mix them into these pits that they dug in the dungeon. And then they would basically use these little cranes to drop each other into them, and it would turn them into mutant super goblins with, some of them had 3 legs and multiple heads and big, huge rippling muscles and stuff like that. Some sort of Resident Evil style craziness. Not only that, but as they delved deeper, they learned that one of the villains that they have been trying to deal with, called the Faceless One, who is a wizard dedicated to Vecna, which I stole straight out of the Age of Worms campaign from Dungeon Magazine, wants to recover the hand and eye of Vecna. And he was the one that taught the goblins how to make these, mutagenic pools, to turn these goblins into engines of destruction. And so stopping the goblins, they learned that the Faceless One had continued to elude them, but has descended deep into the Underdark from a tunnel that connects from this dungeon further below. And so now the group will continue their explorations once they go back to town and get stocked up to chase the Faceless One and try to put an end to his plans. So we've kind of taken a break from exploring the Barrow Maze itself. I'd had sort of ideas at one point of changing up some of the gods in Barrow Maze to be Vecna, just because I think Vecna is such a really cool villain, and really unique. Anyway, that's where my 3 campaigns are. Well, folks, that's it for this week. I just really wanted to say thank you for everybody that listened and called in, and remember, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and leave a like or a comment on the YouTubes. I would really appreciate it. It would really help me get this show out there to more people. Music is by Alexander Kizanaku. Cover art by John McNally of the Pacific Northwest. You can call in and leave me a message at speakpipe.com/thedungeonplunger or send me an email at all one word dungeonplunger@gmail.com. You can find those in the show notes. And remember, folks, when you're plunging into the dungeon and nature calls, watch out for mimics disguised as toilets, because they're a pain in the butt. Elbows up, plungers up. I will catch you next week. Take care. Hit the music.